We're going to start today's show with the massive breaking news that happened earlier, and that is that the Broncos have a new GM. George Paton, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings, agreed to a 6-year contract with the Denver Broncos. So, Benjamin, how did this come together?
Well, we broke it this morning about 20 minutes before it hit mainstream. So if you're a KOA or a Twitter follower, you'd have known a little bit ahead of everybody. Came together yesterday, and they had a dinner last night that they were putting all the final touches on it and everything. But really, it was done at that point. It started back when they were doing the virtual interviews. There were some things that jumped out in what George Paton was saying. He came with some strong recommendations. Pat Shurmur, the offensive coordinator here, said that George was, vouched for his character, called him a stand-up guy, and knows how to get things done. Gary Kubiak wrote a letter of recommendation from his time working with him, and said the same thing. So there was strong recommendations for him. There was strong around the league. Anybody you asked, nobody has a bad word to say about George Paton. Matter of fact, unsolicited, when I put it out this morning, before Schefter had gotten there, people were asking me around the league. I had some heads of scouting, some scouts, some former front office guys, people, Jim Nagy, director of the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
They all reaching out, asking to make sure it was George, and saying we got an absolute steal, that this guy is great, revered around the league for his ability to do things, and that the Broncos absolutely hit a home run on this one. Unsolicited. I wasn't looking for comments. They came out and said that.
Well, and I'll say from my side of things, solicited. I actually reached out before this was even done. I reached out, I'd say the last couple of days. I've been texting a couple of people I know up in Minnesota, and again, couldn't find a single person to say. And I pressed it a little bit, like, okay, well, what kind of worker is he? And I mean, to a person, every single one of them said, man, I mean, you want to talk about one of those competitive dudes. Mm-hmm. And George Stoy actually in the Gazette had put out a really cool article as well, talking to some of the people that he grew up with and came into the league with, and every single one of them just overwhelmingly say nice things about him, talk about his competitiveness, and just sort of talk about his drive to succeed. I mean, he was working, crazy hours when he first started in Chicago, right? And he was sleeping on a couch for 2 years. He did that, and you know that. I mean, when you're an entry-level scout,
that's what you're doing.
You're barely getting paid anything,
right?
And you're working 20-hour days. They don't care.
They call them 20/20s.
Yeah,
because you work 20 hours a day for $20,000 a year.
Yep.
And that's what it is. And you're sleeping out of your car, sleeping on couches, you're couch surfing everywhere. You're just trying to make ends meet because it's no money. I mean, it's your the people talk about, I want to be a scout someday, and then they figure out what the salary is, and they're like, never mind. It is a thankless grind for guys that are trying to chase a different kind of dream and get where George has gotten. I'll say this: I reached out to division rivals.
Oh, that's
I
a good
reached
one.
out to people that because the measure of man is what his enemies will say about him.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a good
and
one.
Every one of them said the same thing. They're like, man, I wish we had him on our team. I wish he was our guy. I wish he was in here with us, because we would be that much more improved by having him in our room. And so, for me, when you get stuff like that from people, that's the point where you're like, okay, all right, they got one here. And I like Terry Fondon. I like Champ Kelly a lot. But I think they did. I think they did a pretty good job here. There's still, like I said, there's still a scenario where Champ could end up here. They're letting Champ go through his other GM stuff and feel all that out. And if he doesn't get any offers, he may come back.
And there was a big announcement with the Bears today that they were going to bring back Ryan Pace, and they were going to bring back Matt Nagy. So maybe, he's probably saying, okay, well, at least I have a safety net. I know I'm still employed. Right. This isn't one of those like, holy cow, I got to go find a job, because we're getting blown out right now. And
so I think he's got the option of here or a title bump. There are two other names in play for that Matt Russell job. I don't really want to get into that just yet, because I've been asked not to. But I will tell you right now, there's a three-man race, and that's probably not going to be decided until next week.
Well, and I understand that we're actually not going to get a chance to talk to him until next week. He's going to come back to Denver this weekend and kind of get going with things. And, I mean, they kind of have to hit the ground running. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden the calendar has this massive break or anything like that.
Right, your first week out of the gate, you got to figure out the delegation going down to the Senior Bowl, what you're going to do about Shelby Harris, Justin Simmons,
Von Miller's
option. I mean, that's what and that's the first 2 weeks.
Yep.
And what RFA tags to use on Phil Lindsay, Tim Patrick, and Alexander Johnson, and
of course an overall philosophy on what you're going to do at quarterback.
Right, and then you start to do all those other. What are we going to do going forward? We're going to look at those kind of things, and so there's a lot going on there.
Okay, so I think we sort of firmly established there this was a good hire for the organization. It's kind of one of those deals. What did you think about the 6 years? Because I think
that was what was going to happen. I mean, it was going to be a 4 to 6 year deal.
See, I thought somewhere in the 4 to 5.
Six is the new standard for GMs, to be honest with you. It's the same deal that John Lynch got.
Yes.
Over there in
but they paired him with the coach.
Right. It's the standard, though. It's the standard deal. You look at Nick Casario's deal. It's 5-6 years is the standard deal for general managers now. Basically, the rule of thumb is that every coach gets 2 quarterbacks, and every general manager gets 2 head coaches. And it doesn't always shake out like that, but that's kind of the rule of thumb. Everybody gets 1 whiff, and then you got to hit. And that's kind of the rule of thumb. And 6 years would give give George Paton, if Vic Fangio doesn't work out, the opportunity to hire another guy and see that situation through.